Okay, so I understand cutting out meat and dairy and eggs, and I can even grasp honey, leather, and wool. But silk? I mean, they're worms. And we're only taking the silk they make, so what's the big deal? But it's so soft and luxurious. And it's got such a luster. Well, it's not like, but you make a compelling point, sir. Hi, it's Emily from Bite Size Vegan, and welcome to another Vegan Nugget. With all of the considerations vegans must make, one that tends to be low on the list is silk. The cruelty of meat, dairy, and eggs is painfully evident to anyone who takes a moment to look into their production. Even honey and wool, after some digging, or vegan nugget watching, are accepted as inhumane, exploitative products. But what about silk? How is it even made, and why should vegans be concerned? Well, to start off, the kind of silk production we're going to focus on today is that of silkworms. But it should be noted that silk is produced by a number of insects, like Embryoptera, commonly known as web spinners, Hymenoptera, bees, wasps, and ants, silverfish, mayflies, thrips, leafhoppers, beetles, lacewings, fleas, flies, and midgets. Other types of arthropods also produce silk, most notably various arachnids such as spiders. Spider silk is experimentally being used in the medical field to mend bones and for military purposes to produce an alternative to Kevlar via inserting spider genes into goats so they can excrete silk in their milk, from which protective vests are made. I am not making this shit up. The silkworms responsible for the vast majority of commercial silk production are the Bombyx Mori, domesticated and selectively bred from the wild Bombyx mandarina. The earliest evidence of silk and silkworm domestication dates back over 5,000 years ago to 3630 B.C.E. in ancient China, where sericulture, or silk farming, was born. The Chinese emperors tried to keep silk production a secret in order to maintain a monopoly, but by around 200 BCE, sericulture had already crossed into Korea and later Japan and India. Now, just a note, some of the statistics in this video vary widely as various sources seem to disagree to the actual numbers and/or are unclear in their exact units. I've done my best to give you a general impression of the numbers given and document my sources in the blog post for this video, which is linked up there and in the video description below. Now, to understand why silk may be objectionable to vegans, we need to understand how silk is made. And to understand how silk is made, we first need to understand the life cycle of the Bombyx Mori, which we'll go over in brief. Don't you love how thorough I am? Don't you? When a Bombyx Mori lays eggs, they typically hatch within 10 to 14 days. However, depending on the needs of the farmer, they are often placed in refrigeration for months at a time, up to a year. Once warmed back up again, they generally hatch in the same time frame. The hatchlings need to be fed immediately as they have a voracious appetite and will die from dehydration and starvation very quickly. The Bombyx Mori have a preference for the white mulberry leaves. Their name is actually Latin for silkworm of the mulberry tree, and mulberry silk is considered to be the finest and most lustrous. The hatchlings eat constantly and go through 5 instars, the term for the developmental stage between molts. Over a period of about 35 days, Bombyx Mori shed their skin 4 times, ending up 10,000 times heavier and 30 times longer than they were upon hatching. Once they've reached their 5th instar, they enter their pupal stage and encase themselves in cocoons of pure silk. The silk itself is secreted from 2 salivary glands on the head of the larvae and consists of 2 proteins, fibroin, the structural center, and sericin, the gum which cements the filaments. Yes, those elegant dresses and luxurious sheets are worm spit. Given the bee regurgitation we like to sweeten our coffee and pastries with, there seems to be a human fascination with utilizing the oral excretion of insects. Moving along, each cocoon is composed of filaments up to 3,000 feet or 914 meters in length. So at this point you may be thinking, what's the harm in harvesting this silk? The little buggers spit it out and sleep in it for a little bit, but it's not like they're going to live in there forever. Well, this is where the silk production process takes a turn. You see, to get out of their cocoons, silkworms, who are at this point moths, chew their way out, thus severely shortening the length of the silk threads and decreasing their value and the luster of the material produced. To avoid this destruction of raw materials, silk farmers will stifle, meaning kill, the pupae by either baking them, immersing them in boiling water, or less commonly freezing them or piercing them with a needle. This is performed generally between 2 days and 2 weeks after spinning has begun, before they transform into moths. Once the pupae are dead, cocoons are then soaked in water to be more easily unraveled. The pupae are then discarded or, in some countries, eaten. If allowed to live past their pupal stage, they would emerge from their cocoons as moths, mate, lay eggs, and die naturally after about a week, as they can no longer eat and rely purely upon the nutrients that they took in during their larval stage. So, just how many silkworms are killed every year for the production of silk? Well, this is where I found the greatest variation in statistics. Many articles and websites were repasting the same statistical table sourced from the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations from 2005, and the blanket number of 70 million pounds for the amount of raw silk produced each year. The most recent figures available from the FAO are from 2012 and state that worldwide 161,661 metric tons of raw silk was produced, meaning 161,661 kilograms, or 356,401,498 pounds, which far dwarfs the 70 million repeated time and again. This larger figure is closely echoed by the International Sericulture Commission, which gives a slightly more conservative estimation of 152,846 metric tons for 2012, and provides a 2013 figure of 159,776 metric tons. Now, as far as how many silkworms that means, those numbers vary as well, but the average range given was 4,400 to 14,969 per kilogram. The higher figure was provided by Kusuma Rajaya, an Indian government officer and the creator of Ahimsa silk, which we'll address in just a moment, when he estimated that 15 worms are killed per gram of silk. If we go with the more conservative 2013 estimate from the International Sericulture Committee of 159,776 metric tons, and apply the range of worms killed per kilogram, we end up with anywhere between over 730 billion and over 2 trillion worms killed for silk in 2013. If we take the far more conservative and, as far as I could tell, uncited figure of 70 million pounds, we still end up with between over 139 billion and over 475 billion worms killed in a given year. For a fabric that accounts for less than 0.2% of the world's fiber market, that's a pretty staggering death toll. Another way silkworms are used is for the production of what's called silkworm gut, which is mainly used to make fly fishing leaders. For silkworm gut, silkworms are killed by methods such as submersion in a vinegar solution just before they are about to spin, and their silk glands are removed and stretched into strong threads, which look and feel much like plastic. As for whether silkworms or other insects in general are sentient and able to experience pain, studies conducted with morphine demonstrate insects' responses as being indicative of an ability to feel pain, but the scientific community remains conflicted. Silkworms do possess a central nervous system and brain, and definitely display nociception, but an in-depth investigation as to their ability to feel pain will have to be another video entirely. For an explanation of the difference between nociception and pain, see this video. But even if we assume that their death is painless, and we all know what assumptions do, it's still a death, and a human-induced premature one at that. An alternative to this method of silk production has arisen called peace silk or ahimsa silk, after the Sanskrit term for nonviolence. There are a number of sources and methods under the peace silk umbrella, and not all are much different than the traditional approach. The most idealized version of peace silk is that which is harvested in the wild from the empty cocoons of silk moths. Eri Silk is one made from the cocoons of Samia racini, who leave a little hole in their cocoon from which they emerge. This type of silk cannot be processed like Bombyx Mori silk and accounts for a very small portion of the silk market. Ahimsa silk, which I mentioned briefly earlier, is made from Bombyx Mori, who have been allowed to go through their metamorphosis and emerge from their cocoons before the cocoons are harvested. The clarity of various peace silk suppliers' actual practices can be difficult to ascertain. Silk moth cultivator Michael Cook wrote an article criticizing the various piece silk methods, pointing to the potential deaths inherent in the next generation of eggs and hatchlings, and the unrealistic, idealized notions of wild-picked, vacated cocoons. Now, Mr. Cook himself raises and kills silkworms, so his input on the possible ethical conflicts of piece silk is certainly interesting to say the least. Piece silk producers have and will refute such criticisms, but I think it's important to fully and deeply investigate any so-called humane methods of animal product and byproduct production, and to ask the question of whether the use of living beings in any form can be ethical. Regardless of their treatment, the fact remains that domesticated silkworms are exploited for their silk. They have been selectively bred with the sole purpose of producing as much silk as possible, much like the animals of the food industry, who have been bred into disfigured absurdities too large to support their own body weight. The adult Bombyx Mori cannot even fly. They also cannot eat due to their reduced mouthpart and small heads, a fact which is often cited as evidence of human manipulation, but this is true of all Saturniidae or giant silk moths. Still, these beings are bred, enslaved, and slaughtered for unnecessary luxury fabric. If you feel the term of enslavement and slaughter are unfitting for an insect, I would urge you to watch this video with vegan activist Eri Silk on speciesism. Just because these tiny creatures look so foreign and unlike us, doesn't mean they deserve exploitation. Their lives may seem brief and inconsequential, but the same could be said for us from an outside perspective. The fact remains they are living beings all their own, with brains and nerves and desires. Now, I can't presume to know the desires of a silkworm, but I think it's safe to say that none of them are becoming your dress or bed sheets. Luckily, there are numerous alternatives to silk, including rayon, nylon, milkweed seed pod fibers, silk, cotton, tree and ceiba tree filaments, polyester, tinsel, and lyocell, a type of cellulose fiber. So, you can stay silky without the cruelty. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Were you aware of the way silk is made? Do you find it problematic? Do you think the piece silk methods are acceptable? Or is the use of any being in any form exploitative? Let me know in the comments. The time it took to produce this video clocks in at about... If you would like to help support Bite Size Vegan so I can keep putting in the hours to bring you this educational resource, please check out the support links in the video description below, where you can give a one-time donation or receive perks and rewards for your support by joining the Nugget Army. The link for that is also in the iCard sidebar. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it around to show that even the smallest beings deserve respect, protection, and freedom. If you're new here, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button down there for more awesome vegan content every Monday, Wednesday, and some Fridays. And hey, check out some of my related videos like Eri Silk talking about bugs in general, and whether honey or wool are vegan. And remember, extra resources and citations for everything I talked about are in the blog post for this video, linked up below and in the sidebar. Now go live vegan, and I'll see you soon. What if I just opened the cocoon for you? What if I opened it and had some food for you? Oh, you can't eat. Of course, there is one ethical version of silk. Silk plant milk. Except for the version that they came out recently with honey in it. Why, silk? Why? Why must you un-veganize our vegan things? Can't we have anything nice?